Today for Devotions with Daniella, we are reading Touched Out, Motherhood, Misogyny, Consent, and Control by Amanda Montei. In the late 2010s, attachment parenting also fueled a broader movement towards so-called gentle parenting. As Jessica Winter wrote in a piece for The New Yorker titled, "The Harsh Realm of Gentle Parenting," gentle parenting is an umbrella term for any number of non-disciplinary approaches to raising kids. In its broadest outlines, Winter writes, gentle parenting centers on acknowledging a child's feelings and the motivations behind challenging behavior, as opposed to correcting the behavior itself. But the approach often gets disconnected from its socio-political and economic context. By 2022, when Winter penned that essay, fatigue was setting in for many parents concerning the deference to the child's every mood, the strict maintenance of emotional affect. Whether or not strict maintenance of affect is the real key to gentle parenting, the sheer volume of advice I consumed led me to feel that fatigue, long before I could articulate it. Motherhood was like an abduction, like landing in front of some strange alien spectacle in which I was pushed constantly to report for duty, to behave. I wanted to tear all these hands and ideas off my body. The only thing that gave me comfort was finding, in my aimless scrolling online, that I was not alone in my exhaustion and bewilderment. I found mothers like me online who wanted to pull their own skin off. And when that feeling reemerged for me during the pandemic several years later, I dug around online, finding the content had exploded. Everyday moms and parenting influencers, some clinically certified, others not, speculated that feeling touched out can come from consumerism, which contributes to overstimulation with toys that make noise and mess in the home, as well as from the general sensory overload of parenting alone in the home, especially for those with ADHD or sensory processing disorders. One mother described the urgent fleshiness of parenting in a caption to a touched out Instagram meme. My baby's small hands clawing at me, his legs kicking me as he writhed in pain and frustration, with the wind stuck in his tummy. Every time I put him down, he screamed. His cries were so piercing at times, and the sound went straight through me and really hit a nerve. I had no choice but to pick him up again. In another popular TikTok, since taken down, one woman described how motherhood changed her from a hugger who loved physical touch to someone who has not felt self-ownership over her body for 6 years. All day long, my body belongs to another human being. And at the end of the day, I'm done being touched, she says. Considering whether she might just force herself to be intimate with her husband, she says, to lose myself to one more person would take away any control I do have over my body. Numerous accounts posted by usually white and married women on social media and mom websites talked about these ambivalent feelings regarding their partner's schmexual demands and their sense of losing control over their bodies. These anecdotes tended to follow a similar pattern. After describing the absurd physicality of caring for children in isolation in the domestic space, the narrative pivoted to the male partner returning from work, who is shocked to find himself pushed away by his wife, a wife who has been home alone all day, taking care of the home and children. Not long after I started working at the daycare, though John and my shared intimacy had unraveled as soon as Hannah was born, I had for a time forced myself to give my body up to him. But like these women, I was becoming uncomfortable with any more claims to my body beyond what I was already experiencing with my child and at the daycare. There was clearly something amiss in men's expectations. Even so, at the height of the pandemic, one article would suggest that the women who felt too schlubby to have schmecks should just force themselves to start touching their partners. The article accepted the basic premise that fear, worry, loneliness, and boredom are buzzkills, but ultimately proposed more touching to get out of your head and let your body take over. Like many elements of American motherhood, women's profound struggles with something as critical as touch to human intimacy and development have been mostly written off as par for the course, as a natural condition of biology, perhaps even of the feminine condition, but also as normal, a vague designation that sidesteps culture and politics. Nearly all reporting on the touched out phenomenon assures mothers it's normal to want to jump out of one's own skin, something I appreciated as I began frantically Googling the term. The assurances kept me from spiraling into cycles of regret, confusion, and shame, knowing how American culture side-eyes negative emotions felt by mothers, especially rejections of closeness or tenderness. The "it's normal" content was destigmatizing, but women's tendencies to have overwhelming urges to push the world away in new motherhood also risked being misinterpreted as simply part of the process of becoming a parent, despite the clearly unreasonable expectations women were under to perform schmexually in their marriages, renegotiate careers and identities, parent in isolation, and play nice no matter what their children did. Despite the clearly complex social, cultural, economic, and political stressors that an aversion to touch indicates are at work in the body, articles on mothers' experiences of it mostly downplayed this complex, carnal, corporeal reaction to the often traumatic culture of white, middle-class motherhood, even claiming that women's not wanting to be touched by their kids and partners is caused by nothing specifically, even though it's a thing. I could not help but wonder why we let things go on this way. As a new mother, I felt completely touched out all the time by the knockabout nature of care work. The heaving, the scrambling, the rubbing, the sounds, the literal shit under my fingernails. And most strongly on days when it seemed I never stopped moving, too frenzied by the constant productivity of my body. But I was also complicit. Not only did I not see any feasible mode of escape at that time in my life, but I also still believed that laying myself down on the tracks to be railroaded by my child, or on the floor as train tracks so my daughter could run her caboose over my back, was the best way to parent. It hadn't yet occurred to me to consider what other lessons I was teaching my daughter in the process.